The Bauhaus was an art school in Germany, where students learned to create pieces through a unique workshop-based curriculum. Yet, it was also a laboratory for modernism, where its members explored new theories and methods. The Bauhaus took a stand for innovation in art, architecture, and design, and the education thereof, when faced with primarily political opposition. The nation of Germany was devastated following World War I. At this time, the country was a center for modern art and architecture. One of the most popular artistic styles was Expressionism, which emphasized emotion. There were many expressionist groups, such as Der Blue Reiter, working around this time. However, following the war, there was a need for this spirit to be revitalized, as well as a need for new buildings to be constructed. Walter Gropius, a war veteran and established architect from projects such as the Fagus factory, was appointed to direct the Weimar Academy of Fine Art in 1919. He combined the academy with another local arts and crafts school that same year to form the Bauhaus, which translates to House of Building or House of Construction. With this, Gropius published the Bauhaus Manifesto, in which he outlined his core philosophy for the school. These ideas included unity of the arts, as well as a form of hands-on learning that recalled medieval craftsmanship training. The first two faculty members that Gropius hired were expressionist artists Lionel Feininger and Johannes Itten. Throughout the Bauhaus's existence, many of the faculty members were visual artists, even though much of the school's work was related to design. Gropius continued to hire well-known artists, such as Vasily Kandinsky and Paul Klee. These teachers, who were referred to as masters, primarily had experience in their trade rather than education. At the time of its founding, one of the most unique elements of the Bauhaus was its curriculum. A Bauhaus student would begin his or her education by taking the preliminary course. This class was often taught by a visual artist and summarized basic design principles. Following this, a student would enter a workshop, where they would become trained in a more specialized area. The first workshops at the Bauhaus included cabinetry, metalworking, weaving, wall painting, printmaking, sculpture, and ceramics. Later on, new departments were established, such as those for theater and photography. Students were encouraged to develop their own style, and actually discouraged from copying that of their teacher. Experimentation with new materials was encouraged. For example, Gunther Stolzel, director of the weaving workshop, had her students try out cellophane, fiberglass, and metal in their work. The members of the Bauhaus also wanted to use these innovations to improve the way that people lived. They wanted to incorporate their stylistic principles into as many areas as possible. The early years of the Bauhaus had an expressionist influence, and more individual design works using materials such as wood. By 1923, there was a stylistic and ideological change at the Bauhaus. There was increased interest in industrialization and a geometric style known as constructivism. This influence was brought in part by new faculty member Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, as well as a similar Dutch movement called De Stijl. This resulted in what is referred to today as the Bauhaus style. This was often characterized by basic shapes and primary colors. Among the works designed for mass production were Marcel Breuer's Vasily chair and Willem Wagenfeld's table lamp, though the latter proved to be too expensive for manufacture. Some of the products designed in the Bauhaus workshops were produced and sold, bringing revenue to the school and allowing it to be less reliant on state funding. However, the principles of unity of the arts and workshop learning continued to play a key role. By 1925, several former students had joined the faculty, such as Joseph Albers, Marcel Breuer, and Herbert Bayer. Among the other notable faculty members were Oskar Schlemmer and Just Schmidt. In 1925, a new government cut funding of the Bauhaus in Weimar. Most of the school chose to move to the city of Dessau by the mayor's invitation. Gropius designed the new Bauhaus building. This used innovative materials such as iron, concrete, and glass. The change in location allowed for the construction of many other projects, to which theories of architecture and design could be applied. For example, Gropius also designed 4 masters' houses for some of the faculty and their families to reside in. In 1926, Gropius and other Bauhaus members began work on the Turton Estate, a housing project in Dessau. The project, which continued for the next 2 years, provided income for the Bauhaus. However, it ran over budget and there were errors in the construction, making it unpopular with local residents and the government. While the Bauhaus thrived in its new location, it also faced increased antagonism, like that resulted from the Torten estate. A few years into the Bauhaus's time at Dessau, it began to face financial difficulty, as well as a difficult relationship with the city's mayor. Due to this, Walter Gropius resigned as director in 1928. At the same time, several faculty members including Breuer, Bayer, and Moholy-Nagy also left the school. The new director was Swiss architect Hans Meyer. With his directorship, Meyer brought a new socialist philosophy that he intended to incorporate into the Bauhaus curriculum. He also hired new faculty who partly helped enforce his vision for the Bauhaus. However, his leftist policies aroused suspicion outside of the Bauhaus, and his dismissal of art as merely a luxury concerned some of the faculty members. As a result of this, he was removed from his position in 1930. Meyer was replaced by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. He was already a very successful architect and was well known in Germany. As director, he placed additional emphasis on architecture and hired new faculty members, as many of the older masters were leaving the school. Though Mies van der Rohe tried to keep the Bauhaus as non-political as possible, there was still significant tension over it in the government. Eventually, the Nazi Party took control of the local government in Dessau and forced the Bauhaus out of their city. In 1932, the Bauhaus was relocated to Berlin as a private institution. However, it only continued there for a short time. In 1933, the Nazi Party took power of the German government. On April 11th, the police stormed the Bauhaus, temporarily arrested a group of students, and forcibly shut it down. The remaining members of the school decided to disband rather than reopen and align with Nazi policy. The shutdown of the Bauhaus was part of the Nazis' attack on the modern art establishment, which was partly personal for Hitler because he had been rejected from art school before he went into politics. In 1937, the German government opened an exhibition of so-called degenerate art featuring some Bauhaus artists, including Klee, Kandinsky, and Moholy-Nagy. The exhibition displayed modern art, as well as works by Jewish artists. The pieces were put on display in a very demeaning fashion. Many paintings were hung at crooked angles, and actors were hired to mingle with the guests and criticize the works. Because of the hostile environment created by the Nazis, many former Bauhaus members emigrated. For example, Kandinsky went to France, Klee to Switzerland, and Meyer to the USSR. However, it was the United States that attracted the most Bauhaus members. Just after the Bauhaus closed, Joseph Albers and his wife Annie, a former student at the weaving workshop, were invited to teach at Black Mountain College in North Carolina, a school with many similarities to the Bauhaus. In 1937, Moholy-Nagy established the new Bauhaus in Chicago. It still survives today as the Illinois Institute of Technology Graduate School of Design. The school's curriculum was based off of that of the original Bauhaus. Following a brief time in London, Walter Gropius moved to Massachusetts with his wife Isa in 1938. There, he became a professor at the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. In the nearby town of Lincoln, he constructed a house with a design that followed many principles of Bauhaus architecture. It was here that he would reside until his death in 1969. Throughout the rest of his life, Gropius continued to promote the Bauhaus, both as a style and a school. For example, he helped organize a 1938 exhibition of the Bauhaus at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He also contributed to both Black Mountain College and the new Bauhaus as an advisor. Bauhaus influence was largely welcomed in America, in part because it was seen as being anti-Nazi. This influence was also spread to America by Breuer, Bayer, Feininger, and Mies van der Rohe. The members of the Bauhaus consistently took a stand for their ideas about art, architecture, and design, as well as how those subjects should be taught. They consistently faced opposition from political leaders, and moved twice rather than shut their school down when funding was cut. Even after they were forcibly shut down, they continued to spread their concepts and innovations across the world. The impact of these is still present today. For example, the preliminary course is still used by many schools. This stand allowed the Bauhaus to spread their principles, revolutionizing design and the arts.